Hi, this is Joe Satriani, and you're watching the Guitar Mania channel.
Thanks, Joe. It's a pleasure to see you again. I had the pleasure to meet you in Vienna several years ago, and we're really looking forward to tonight's show. Actually, in terms of talking about you've got a new album, Unstoppable Momentum, which you recorded at Skywalker Sound Studios, I understand.
Yes.
So you worked with Mike Canelli again. Why did you choose him to?
Well, I was lucky that he was available. I knew I needed somebody who could improvise, and somebody who, once again, not only had virtuosity on both instruments, but had a good insight into guitar, and that's always, I thought, been one of Mike's strengths as a keyboard player, besides the obvious that he's a great player, but because he's such a great guitarist, he understands what I'm trying to do very often, and knows how to work around it and how to support it.
Right.
And then quite a bit during the show he plays guitar, so it's almost 50-50, and so that's really a lot of fun. We get to play things, we get to jam back and forth together on stage, which is great. Sort of like a little G2 going on.
Beautiful. What on earth is the meat cleaver? Something I understand you did on the title song.
Yeah, it's something that, I like making noises. Ever since I was in high school and I was introduced to musique concrète, the French avant-garde music back in the 50s, I was, and being a fan of Jimi Hendrix, I really liked the idea of using the guitar to represent sounds in the natural world, in the man-made world, in reality that we live in. And so it's not unusual for me to come up with techniques that maybe mirror something mechanical, heavy machinery, things like that, just like I would, write a super high melody because I'm trying to replicate a songbird or something like that. So the meat cleaver is just one of those funny little things that involves reaching around, using my left hand to depress the vibrato bar, change the pitch of the low string, and then using the right hand pick to sort of chop like a meat cleaver, like you're chopping some kind of food back and forth, and then move it around to change the harmonic point that it's hitting the string, and then changing the pitch of the string. And
okay, that's what it is.
So it was one of the things I was teaching Chad on one of the Chickenfoot tours, and I got caught on tape, and was part of our live DVD. And so
one of the things that really strike the listeners is the vocal quality of your melodies, and like also in the Can't Go Back, for instance, sounds like as if you have the guitars would be background singers.
Oh yeah, great.
And is that something that you try to achieve, or that you have always at the back of your mind to achieve this sort of vocal quality?
Well, I did, when I was editing the songs that I had for this album, I started to notice that was something that might be an interesting arrangement theme to bring up on a couple of songs, where instead of having the melody guitar fill up all the space, that like soul music, you have a short message being delivered, a short but very important message being delivered by the lead singer, and then an extra important message being delivered by the background singers. And so I thought, well, I should think about this, as I go about some of these songs, that maybe the lead guitar should just take a step back for a second and let some other guitar come in, finish the statement. And so I just found as many places on the record where I thought that might be able to work, and some places it did, other places it, we changed the way that the guitar operated in the song. Like Three Sheets to the Wind, there's horns and piano that take a lot of burden off the guitar, but that seemed to make the song so much more interesting.
I understand that during the recording process you did not always really reveal the real titles of the songs.
That's true, yeah. I thought it was interesting. I mean, I sometimes, I arrive in the studio and I still have work to do with the titles. You know, I may have 6 rough titles that basically mean the same thing, but I haven't quite edited it down to that 1 3-word phrase yet. And instead of, you know, subjecting the band to all these different ideas, I'll just use maybe a musical working title that has the key, the tempo, or the temperament of a song. So like with Lies and Truths, I think it was called Fast Robot because that was when I started out that song, I think I was programming some drum loops, and I just called the file Fast Robot to remind myself that's what I was thinking about. And so that the name on the Pro Tools files just kept going and going, and then that day when I showed Vinny and Chris and Mike the song, it still had that title. But it was interesting because I watched them look at it and listen to the song and think about a fast robot. So I thought, I'm not going to say anything. See what happens, you know.
But it's also like, I mean, if you have a sort of a title, sometimes an image pops up in your mind and you associate something.
That's true.
And
yeah. But see, I learned my lesson actually many years ago. There was a song called "Crying" for the Extremist record, and you know, that song was written in a very emotional moment. I was grieving for my father passing away, and I was trying to, you know, reach for some hopefulness, you know, in remembering his life. And when it was released, people thought it was a love song.
Okay.
And then by the time we came here for the European tour, the show RAN, I think, is it called RAN?
RAN, yeah.
RAN, was using it every Sunday to show the highlights of the football week. And then they invited us to come and play on the show. Now, had I called the song, you know, "I'm so sad because my dad passed away," that none of that would happen. It would have been too much information to my fans. So I learned that it's good to be, you know, to take a step back and make sure that people can enjoy the music. Don't spoil it, you know. And so in a lighter sense, that little incident that happened in the studio with the song "Lies and Truths" was, again, an example of how sometimes it's important where you can withhold, let's say, the real meaning of the song for a bit, you know, not only to the audience but to the musicians as well, because it's not really instructive in any way to them, and it might change the way they play, you know.
I understand for the new record you also kept sort of the arrangements a bit more open. How much was there also a more improvisational element to
Well, I'd have to say that the arrangements themselves, you know, where we started, where the choruses were, and all that kind of stuff, that was pretty much set in stone. Because what I do now is I record in my home studio. There's a lot of keyboard, guitar information that's already completely finished. So, you know, I bring it in. Again, let's say for a song like "Lies and Truths," I had already done that weird keyboard, and I'd done one of the solos and some of the rhythm guitars. And so we kept those, and as a 4-piece band, we would play along with those recordings.
Right.
And we would be like a live band with these extra guitar players like with us. And Mike just improvised all the organ. Every take, Mike would do great stuff. It's almost like a solo for him that he comes in and out of the guitars.
Yeah.
And I did 2 of the solos I did live, and the melody.
But when you say, sorry for interrupting, when you say live, does that mean it's improvised? Or
yeah, it's improvised. It gets recorded, and that's what's on the record. So there's a section where I'm doing a lot of tapping with the pick. That had already been recorded at my house, but then the solo after that sounds like Hendrix, that was just one of the live solos I did.
Yeah.
That just happened to be the solo I did on the take where we thought Vinny really played something great, so we kept that version of it.
Yeah.
And so those parts of the arrangements, the song arrangement, I keep exactly the same. I think the only song that we changed was the title track, where after listening to Vinny play a bit, I thought maybe we should just extend the end and let him play a bit more. And then he just gave us this crazy performance, and then it was like, well, that's definitely the take we're going to use, you know.
Can you please tell us about your approach to counterpoint?
Well, I have this funny thing about counterpoint. When I was in high school, I studied 18th century counterpoint, and there are lots of rules about that. And the rules are very strict, but they produce a very elegant relationship between melody, harmony, rhythm, but it's restricting. Any rule is restricting. If you look at hip hop could never have happened if they were going by the rules of 18th century counterpoint, you know what I mean? And the fact that counterpoint came about was because those musicians were obviously frustrated with music up till that point. And they said, we want to do something better, so let's try to arrange this so that these rules will always keep us away from repeating things that we don't like from the past. But I actually have gone the other way, where I've thought, some of these songs I'm going to allow there to be clusters. The whole point of counterpoint, is they don't want you to do parallel fifths. They don't, if you've got a 3 here, they don't want a 2 there, and they're trying to make everything as clear and as organized as possible. That went along with the thinking, the 18th century thinking. The world as a big mechanical, perfectly tuned machine. We obviously know that we don't live in that world. We never did. It's chaos, and I've being a child of the rock and roll generation, I don't mind the cluster and the noise and the feedback. In fact, I kind of need that. I like it. So in a subtle way, I've pushed hard, but I think most people don't really hear it so much. But I could point out to you, I would hate to spoil it for people, but if you look at a song like Can't Go Back, it violates quite a few rules of counterpoint. 18th century counterpoint,
which is actually one of my favorite songs.
Great, and I think when you let things rub against each other and violate some of those old rules, that you get some more emotion out of it, and that's what I was trying to do, because the song is about the heartbreak of never being able to go back emotionally and intellectually to the place you were when you were younger. And it could have been a relationship or a home, a house, a city, whatever, Very often once you leave home and you go through a process of becoming a young adult or a young man, you come back home and you go, wow, this simply is the place of my youth. It's no longer my home, So that's what that song was really about. And so I thought, it's okay that there's this, this little guitar part that I've put on the electric piano, and then there's harmonics, and then there's this melody, and they are going to rub against each other as they do this in the song, But for me, it provides the drama.
Is it true Lenny Tristana was your teacher at one stage?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, how much of his teaching is still in your playing? I mean,
Lenny wasn't a guitar player; he was a piano player, and he taught singers and drummers and horn players and guitarists. I think I was the only rock guitarist that ever came to him for lessons. All the rest of the guys wanted to be, bebop musicians. But I knew what I was. I used to bring in Black Sabbath and Johnny Winter and Hendrix, and, but he didn't mind. He loved all of it. If it was good, if it was authentic, he loved it. What he taught me was, how is Joe Satriani going to be a real musician, true to himself? How is he going to overcome his lack of talent in certain areas? He taught me what it meant to be a musician, what it means to really practice, to really try, to really also, he taught me what improvisation really is and what you have to do to truly live a life where you want to improvise and what that takes. And it's a set of disciplines that most people would never dare embark, upon. And I'm not talking about practicing for hours or something silly like that. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about your approach, your heartfelt approach to what you're doing, and a marriage with that and your brain to try to get you through what we all do, which is we're human beings. We're crazy. We're out of control. We can't be trusted with ourselves. And so when we go to try to learn an instrument, we come up against all those things that are human, which is we'd rather be sitting on a couch watching TV, eating potato chips and drinking beer, rather than really studying harmonic minor in every single key, in every voicing on the guitar, memorized in seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, and sevenths, which is what I had to do, which is what he told me to do. And, you know, if I made one mistake, the lesson was over.
You're kidding, really?
Yeah, it was very intense. If you were displaying something that you had to practice that had to do with scales or harmony, there was no leniency whatsoever. You just got up, paid him, and left. And but when it came to improvising, it was the opposite. He didn't want you to ever be judgmental. He wanted you to only live to create. So that meant not being judgmental against yourself. Don't think about what you just played. Just keep moving forward. And his whole theory was, in order to be truly in the realm of improvisation, you have to know your shit so well, more than you ever thought. So don't think about just memorizing a song, and don't you dare repeat an inflection on this song that you did in that song, because then you're just like a neurotic monkey repeating yourself. You're not a real human being, you know, pushing yourself to the limit.
Presumably he told you, he was a teacher who said you have to work on your weaknesses more than on your strengths.
He never put it that way. Maybe because of, you know, who he was. I mean, he was a jazz age guy, and he never put it to me like that. He did say to me, though, he'd said to me one day after an improvisation, he said, well, maybe in about 12 or 15 years you might play something good. And for him to say that was affectionate, because I remember going out into the room where the other students were waiting, and I said, wow, Lenny just told me I might play something good in 15 years. And they said, are you kidding? He never says that to anybody, you know. And they said it like, they made me feel like it was a huge compliment. I was so depressed, you know, because I was 17 years old and I wanted to be a star, you know. But he was right. I didn't get, you know, I mean, almost to the year my solo career started.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty spooky.
Wow, that's cool. I mean, and then of course, I mean, you yourself, you have a history as a teacher. I mean, so many famous guitarists that went through your school.
Yeah, I was a very lucky teacher. Yeah, I didn't have a school. I mean, I was just a private teacher. I was a guitar player who was always in a rock band who would teach during the day.
Yeah.
That's what I did. That's all.
If you were to give one piece of advice for beginners, what would that be?
Oh, well, practice a variety of music. You know, get the nasty, boring stuff out of the way as soon as possible. Learn the name of every note on every string as soon as possible. Just do it every day. Don't do it for 45 minutes. Do it for 6 minutes a day. Exercises, just do them once. No one will ever pay you, you know, to do exercises. They won't give you a record contract. You won't get invited on stage to display your exercises. So they're just there to warm up. So just do them, again, 5 or 6 minutes to move on. As, you know, and then they have to play with other musicians. So it's so important that you find friends who are maybe in your same level, that you can just have fun. Music, you know, is played best, I think, when it's played by people who love music for people who love to listen to music. And that is the definition of our job as musicians. And so we should think about that. You know, if we were, you know, cooks, you know, chefs, right, it would behoove us to understand all of the ingredients and how to use them. So how does a musician go about that? Yeah. They need to expose themselves to all the scales, all the chords, all the harmonies, all the rhythms, all the different ways that different kinds of musicians play. And then we have to learn how to play for different people, like a chef has to cook for the new person who walks through the restaurant door every day. You know what I mean? There's no cookie cutter way of doing music. So
presumably this is also true for intermediate players, like
everybody. I mean, I don't think it ever stops. I mean, that's what does not separate the beginner from the advanced player. It's a continuous journey of the same thing, of understanding how to use the ingredients that comprise music. It's just harder for the beginner because it's just a whole load of information. And for somebody like me who's playing for 40 years, I can talk for hours about how many times I've used this scale and that chord, and you know, when it worked, when it didn't. But the beginner, the benefit that I have now is that I have opinions based on experience of usage, and the beginner doesn't. You know, the beginner says, well, when do I play this scale? If I want everyone to feel really serious all of a sudden, what scale do I use? How do you can tell that student your opinion, and I can tell them mine, but they need to develop their own.